empowered if they don't have physical security, emotional security, financial or economic security, etc. To all of these insecurities will contribute to women not achieving empowerment.
Welcome to a new episode of Pathways to Peace. You might notice a new voice today. I'm Kezia Abrahams and I'll be the new host. Today we have with us Prof Cheryl Hendricks, Executive Director at IJR, and as it is Women's Month, she'll be talking to us a bit more about women, peace and security. Prof Hendricks, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure, Kezia.
For listeners who might not be familiar, what is women, peace and security?
The Women, Peace and Security agenda is anchored in UN Security Council Resolution 1325, but it really has a much longer genesis, coming from 1915, when women wanted to be meaningfully included into peace processes. So 1915 would be end of World War I already. UN Security Council Resolution 1325 calls for women's meaningful participation in peace processes, the prevention of violence against women, women's protection during conflict situation, and women's participation in relief and recovery efforts, as well as those efforts taking into account the interests of women.
And with regards to the Women, Peace and Security agenda, why is it an important focus, particularly in Africa?
This is an international agenda that Africans were at the forefront of pushing for. So it would be the Windhoek Declaration that started before that. It would be Kampala Initiative way back in 1994 that fed into the Beijing Platform for Action, noting what was happening to women during war, how women were peace builders during war, and that women were being excluded from peace processes. In Africa itself, there were a number of conflicts happening, and a number of women's peace-building organizations emerged, especially across West Africa. And so women in Africa have always been a driving force of this peace and security agenda. It's important for us because we are still the continent that has the highest number of conflicts. Women's bodies are still targeted during those conflicts. And without the participation of women in peace processes, we will not get comprehensive and inclusive processes for the whole of society.
From your perspective, how has Africa responded to the WPS agenda, and where are we seeing progress?
So Africa, as I already mentioned, has been at the forefront of initiating and implementing this agenda. It was when Namibia was the chair of the UN Security Council that we got the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 adopted. Secondly, the African Union itself has developed the frameworks and the institutions or architecture to implement WPS. Regional economic communities also have adopted plans. There are 35 national action plans on the continent already. So really we have been trying to implement this agenda. There are many barriers to this agenda because you can have the frameworks, you can have the institutions, but actual implementation, if you want more women to participate in mediation, you need to get the chair of the African Union or the head of the UN to tell the mediators to invite more women as negotiators, or even to have co-mediation processes. So right now, for example, there's the development of a new framework at the AU to have co-mediation, so that there'll always be a man and a woman mediating, and to have a 30% representation of women in mediation processes. So that's only one example. The agenda is not simply to get women into decision making, it's to have peace and security for women, right? And so I think we've fall a bit short there because we worked so hard on frameworks, we worked so hard on institutions, but it doesn't seem to end the violence against women. So there's a gap there that we need to fill as well. And I think going forward, that's where we need to focus our attention. And remember too, that we cannot have peace and security only for women. The whole society has to be peaceful before women can enjoy peace and security. So in essence, this is an agenda for the whole of society and not just for women.
Thank you for that, Prof. Going back to, I think, the impact and challenges with regards to the WPS agenda, what are some of the key challenges women still face in terms of peace and security work?
One, human rights defenders are really being attacked on this continent. Two, there's a pushback against the agenda and gender equality. So with the whole shift in geopolitics, it was an ideological shift as well as a shift in the balance of power. And so we see that issues such as gender equality is on the back foot here. So those would be some of the challenges. A major challenge is the funding allocated to achieve gender equality. That has been way too little. We need also on this continent, I think, a women's movement. So we can do our own little bit, but without a coherent and cohesive movement actually pushing for this, as we had in the 80s and 90s, I think we're not going to achieve what we have set out to achieve.
Yes, the United Pan-African Women's Front. And since this episode is during Women's Month, how can we link the WPS agenda to celebrating and empowering women today?
Women cannot be empowered if they don't have physical security, emotional security, financial or economic security, etc. All of these insecurities will contribute to women not achieving empowerment. And so I think the Women, Peace and Security agenda, though it is slanted towards physical violence, it is inclusive of the other violences as well. It is important for women to have peace and security. We cannot speak about any of the other achievements if there is no peace and security in the home, in the country, and on the continent.
One more question I'd kind of like to ask is, what is your hopes for women, peace and security going forward, and also in this month of Women's Month?
In this month, I hope that all women across the world, not just in Africa, can enjoy a respite from the conflicts that are raging globally, a respite from the violence that they have been exposed to within the house, within the communities at much larger, and that they can finally see peace and prosperity. So for this month, but hopefully forever, right?
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Prof, for your insights. If there's one thing that has come out of this conversation, as women make up 50% of society, if they're not included in these conversations, peace is not possible. Thank you for joining us today on another episode of Pathways to Peace, and make sure to follow us across social media platforms. Thank you.